Welcome back to the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. I've got my beanie on because it's snowing out here in Maine, which is perfect for this episode of the podcast where we welcome in Simon Birks, Willi Roberts, and Lyndon White, the creative team behind Top Cow Images Antarctica, a book based in Antarctica, in the snow, in the cold. And that's what we're doing here on the podcast today, here in Maine, to talk about this episode, or that's comic book Antarctica, that Image, and Top Cow. So what is Antarctica? You'll have to find out on this episode with Simon, Willi, and Lyndon. But before you do, check out capesandtights.com, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky. Follow over there, subscribe, rate, review, all that stuff over on Spotify, Apple, and all your major podcasting platforms, as well as visit us on our YouTube channel. We have a video portion of this, and actually this is an interesting one because Simon was on a train, so he wasn't able to put his video up, but we're going to do something fun on this so you can see that Simon's on a train. So check this episode out right here on the Capes and Tights podcast, and make sure you check out Antarctica in single issues at your local comic book shop, for the trade drops February 14th, 2024 from Image and Top Cow. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I in my notes here, since we've scheduled this with over Top Cow, it's been the Antarctica team. So that's what you guys are now. You guys considered the Antarctica team. Does that work for you guys?
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah.
Not that you guys are going to visit Antarctica, but that, you know, I mentioned before we recorded, Lyndon wasn't on yet. I think it was just Willi, but it's snowed like 6 inches last night here in Maine. And so like, I feel like it's fitting for a discussion about Antarctica that we have. Like, I had to shovel this morning. I think it's like perfect.
Yeah, it's the right move.
little bit different than where you are, Lyndon, right?
Yeah, it's pretty toasty here in Thailand.
Toasty.
Yeah, very toasty. I mean, funny enough, it was snowing the day I left the UK. So, yeah.
And I'm guessing, Willi, it's not snowing there either.
No, in Argentina we're close to the summer, so it's not too hot, but it's not gonna snow.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, so I mean, we have there's 3 people on here, including myself, so there's 4 people total. But if we want to have a little discussion on how people got into comics in the first place, it'd be great. Just a quick synopsis, I guess, a little like an elevator pitch, I guess, in a sense of how you guys got into comics. Willi, do you want to start with just how you got into the world of comics?
Sure. Well, I'm an artist, and I started working about 10 or 11 years ago, and with small projects and unpaid of any other artists. And it was a funny try. I would start with many people working on, personal projects, not a big publisher. And I don't know, I work a lot of time for different countries like Canada and Australia, and with Simon in UK. And now with Top Cow, of course. And I was artist, I think, my whole life. And I would start with comics because I was working in other stuff and graphic designer, and it's not going very well. I need the art, the painting stuff, and the graphic design is more connected with the marketing and all that. So it wasn't for me. I still using a lot of tools that I learned, the design of the logos, and a lot of it helped me a lot. But then I start, I think, with Simon about 4 years, I can recall, and he contacts me through a website, and I start working in illustration, not comic book, and my game book, and we get on really well. We have a great relationship, and it really helps to the time we have to start with Antarctica, because we know each other, we know how we work together, and it was great. It happens so fast because we were working on The Thing on the Doorstep. It's an adaptation from Lovecraft story, and we're working on the part 3, and I was so getting into that story, and it was a great story to read. And at Blue Fox, and well, he contacted me and say, okay, I had a new project, and it was like Image and Top Cow, and it was like, what? It was crazy for me because I didn't expect that, because he's in the UK, and I didn't know he had a relationship with Top Cow. And he told me, okay, it was funny because I was so getting into that story, and say, okay, we have to start. When I start with this new Antarctica, I remember I read the first script, and it was confusing, and I didn't get where the story is going. And he told me, yeah, and he told me, okay, when I have to start with this, I thought that I have 6 months to start. And he said, okay, now tomorrow. It was like, what? And you have to start with character and all that. It was like, okay, that we are working in another project. Okay, stop everything. This is a huge opportunity. So, and I leave everything and I start right away. It was really, really amazing. And honestly, it happened so fast, since it was about a year ago. And I started working on that, and every day, many hours. And I think I didn't have the time to get all this, the podcast, the Top Cow is a huge company with Image, so my artwork is all over the world, and it was weird, it's new, it's amazing, but it was happening really, really fast.
Yeah, I can imagine. And Lyndon, are you mostly letters in this book? Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm letters. I'm
Okay.
very much of the backup, and the occasional variant cover. So it's all Willi. I just do the sprinkle at the end with lettering.
And how did you get into comics in the first place?
So I went and did it as a degree in North Wales in Wrexham. There's illustration degree for graphic novels. They do children's books and general illustration. And yeah, I did that. And absolutely loved it. And then in my third year, I started getting into like the Comic-Con circuit in the UK with my first comic, my first portfolio. And yeah, when I got to the end of my degree, I just kind of went for it and went into freelancing and doing Comic-Cons, like building up each year. I very much see getting into comics as a slow burn. It takes time. And then I think it was that first year, I actually met Simon, who was coming into comics as well and looking for artists. And yeah, as I've been working on stuff, I've worked with Simon on different things, whether it's lettering, covers, even sometimes just a bit of graphic design or the tail end formatting. Sometimes just don't do the whole book, just bits of the book. And yeah, just built up to it. And now, I spend I usually work on like one big graphic novel a year, and then the rest is like sprinkles of lettering or cover artwork or design. So yeah, I'm very fortunate that I get to work on my own thing by myself as a writer and an artist, but I also get to collaborate with people. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And Simon, you are a novelist, obviously written films, novels, also comic books. What made you get started in comics? Is he still there?
I don't know. I hope so.
He may not be there. We'll continue on when he jumps back in. I don't see it. It says he's here, but maybe he's too busy. It's fine. We'll continue talking.
No, I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Okay. How did you get started in comics?
Back in I always started writing since I was about 11 years old, and I'd done lots of mediums. I hadn't done comics, and all those short films sitting on a hard drive gathering dust. And I thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity there to actually maybe turn those into some or adapt those into comic strips. I didn't know how to start with, so it's been a long process to do that. But we certainly walked around a lot of the comic cons in the UK, and looking for artists where I met Lyndon. And 2015 we started, and then kind of it. But yeah, that's a short.
That's awesome. That's great. And I love you guys all have an interesting, unique story, but it all seems like at least you two, Willi and Lyndon, that you have a connection to Simon. Obviously, that's a cool thing. That's how this got started in the first place. Yeah. I love the fact that we talked a little bit about how this is 4 different continents talking on this podcast, or 4 different locations in the world right now that you're talking about a comic book based in Antarctica. And it's just, it's the funniest thing, but like, how difficult, I mean, anybody can answer this, sort of how difficult is it working on a project like this from far off places? Is it easier now because of the internet, Zoom, email, social media, and things like that? How is that, Willi, has it been difficult to like do this over multiple continents, or is this just the way comics work nowadays?
No, I think in these days more easy than, I don't know, 20 years ago. And we chat all the time with Simon and with Lyndon too, because we always connected in our own group in Instagram, and we discuss, I don't know, ideas, correction of pages, and no, it's very easy because we already know each other. And with Simon, he sent me the script, and maybe change a couple of things, but he trusts me, and I have totally freedom to create all the art and some ideas. I changed a couple of things, but we know each other, and we work very well together. So it's not hard. Very communicative.
I'm guessing you agree on that, Lyndon.
Yeah. I mean, go on, Simon. You've got it. You go.
Thank you. Sorry. The great thing is, as I'm working with artists like Willi and Lyndon, is that it's always additive. They always bring positive stuff and improve anything that I write with their lovely art.
Yeah, I mean, tailoring on from that, like, I mean, we're all just a message away from each other, like, and we do get back to each other. There's none of this sending a message and you don't hear back. We're usually pretty prompt, and we're only a few hours out usually from when we're all working. And yeah, like, I mean, the fact that I can just sit and do this at night, and it's completely different time zones, like, yeah, it's a lot easier than it used to be. And the fact that, like, you can draw on a tablet now, and you can do on the go, like, yeah, I think a lot of it is like just preparation, like, beforehand, and make sure we've got a bit of a head start. So if there's a little bit of delay or we're slightly out by a day, it doesn't really matter because we're usually ahead than we need to be.
That works. Yeah, you're in the future right now, right? In Thailand, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all fitting.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like that's a lot of conversations I had with people about even just the invention of something like Twitter or social media, where people have been able to connect with other people that they never would have been able to connect with, artists, letterers, writers, or whatever, just because of the fact that it's right at your fingertips, and you can be like, this random person in random location can help you with your comic that you maybe used to have like, oh, we were roommates. Like the Turtles started with, Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman in the same room, basically. Whereas, nowadays people could start comics from all over the world, which is really kind of cool. And again, not to hammer this home, but like the fact that it's also on a continent that none of us have been to. I'm guessing none of you guys have been to Antarctica, right?
No, never.
Not yet.
Yeah, exactly. I think you need to do a signing there. You need to do a signing in Antarctica. That's what you guys need to do.
I'll tell you what, if we ever
make the first Comic-Con there.
Yeah, first Comic-Con there. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
6 people would be there.
Antarctica Comic-Con.
Make it not like Fire Festival, right? We'll do like special tickets and a band can play.
Yeah.
You have to sleep outside.
Yeah,
might die. But yeah, so it's a really cool comic. I don't know how I stumbled upon it in the first place. It might have just been my LCS, like, putting out together the orders on and stuff like that I saw it in the first place. But the design of the cover, the artwork, first of all, but the design, the way the logo is on the cover, who's responsible for that?
Not me.
Anybody know? It's like the Antarctica written down the middle of the comic.
Yeah, in the first issue we talked about. I think we start with the cover, and before the pages. I can't recall now, but the idea of the story was pretty particular. So it's kind of my idea, at least,
Yeah.
is the different dimension. So
Oh yeah.
I use the rule that there's one in this side and one in the other side. So that's why I want to use the logo in the middle and not the classic,
Yes.
design. It was an idea. I wasn't sure that they're gonna approve because this, if the logo is in the top, there's a reason for that. We make a sketch, and I think I built the logo with all this fracture. That was Simon's idea, and then we connected with the fracture dimension and all that, the machine, and works very well.
It's a tractor cover. I think one of those things that you hate to say, growing up, we were always told don't judge a book by its cover. But I feel like in the comic book industry, that is like
in comic books, it's the best idea. Yeah, you have to, at least in the first issue, because nobody knows about your comic book. Then you have to attract the reader in the shelf,
And I mean, the trade comes out for this in February, and the first volume trade paperback. Usually, I don't know what your plan is yet, but it's the cover of issue 1 that ends up on the volume 1 cover. Yeah. And so nailing that issue 1 also is important, because that's what people start to use in perpetuity forever to explain what Antarctica, when they talk about Antarctica, this is the cover they're going to use. So nailing that cover and nailing the artwork on the issue 1 is usually way more important, I think, than issue 3 or issue 4. But in the same sense, some people don't. So
it's the beginning of everything. So you have to make a
and
first.
The trade takes that first cover as well, and lots of nice spot UVs. So I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, it comes out February 14th, I believe, is what I've seen on previews. Obviously, things change in the world of comics, I
think it's February. I'm not sure now, but yeah.
Isn't that Valentine's Day? Look at that. It's perfect. It's a love story.
It's a love story in the end.
Yeah, okay. All right. Somewhere.
Issue 6 and issue 7 obviously come out before then with December 13th and January 10th, but the first 5 issues are collected in a trade, which is really cool too. I tend to talk to a lot of people nowadays. I used to talk to some people on the podcast, and I still occasionally do, a few weeks before their comic comes out. But as in the world of comics, FOCs are so crazy and all this other stuff. You'd have to talk to someone like 6 months in advance, 3 months in advance to get actually promotion out on a podcast about a comic book. But a lot of times I end up talking to people like this group here right before the trade comes out, which is nice to push that. And I think that not everybody has an LCS in their backyard or a local comic book shop. And so, but most people have at least a bookstore they can go to. And that's one of the great things about the trade paperback, is that it's going to be available in bookstores across the globe, which is really cool. So that's something that people can get into. And the trade obviously collects the first 5 issues, so you can just rattle those off. I mean, I read issue 1. I usually get it early. And so that I'm like, well, I want to find out what happens next in the next issues. You can do that with the trade. You'll find it right away on that.
Right.
But before we go any further on that and discuss, I actually want to give I'll read the solicitation on there. So just in case anybody doesn't know what Antarctica is, it's a book over at Top Cow Image. It came out, like I said, we just mentioned that 6th issue comes out December 13th. Actually, when this episode drops the day that issue 6 comes out. So if you haven't picked up, issues 1 through 5, hopefully your local comic book shop has those, and you can grab 6 anyway. Even if you haven't picked up issues 1 through 5, you're going to get the trade in February. So grab 6 now to be ready for it for when you finish the trade. Stargate meets his Dark Materials in a new nonstop sci-fi action blockbuster. Hannah's life imploded the day her father failed to return from a secretive Smith-Peterson research station in Antarctica. Alone and on the street, she is at her lowest ebb when her friend offers help. Retrained as an engineer, Hannah secures a job at same Antarctica station to search for her father and stumbles headfirst into a conspiracy that threatens everything she's ever believed. It gripped me from page 1, but really, like I said, I mentioned after I got to the end of this first issue, I was just like, I think I had on my notes, like after 1 issue, I had to it's up for comic book of the year for me, or one of the comic books of the year for me.
Thanks.
It just works so well. It's so well written, Simon. Unbelievably illustrated. I think the lettering's amazing as well. But the layouts themselves too are absolutely stunning. I think that's one thing that a lot of people sometimes move past a little bit and don't really pay attention to as much. But like where the boxes end up and where the people overlap boxes and things like that. But again, like I said, I think my local comic book shop owner and myself have discussions all the time about how underappreciated that lettering in a comic book is. And so sometimes people go, yeah, like you mentioned earlier, Lyndon, I'm the backupper. No, lettering is super important. Yeah. I think that you nailed it with this. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, like Willi's paneling is really dynamic. So like in terms of my paneling when I do a comic, like it's not quite as there's not as much overlapping. So it's really fun to like apply the same rules that Willi uses, which I don't think we've had the discussion about this of what Willi has rules for his paneling, but looking at it, I've applied those to the lettering, so things can overlap. Sometimes it has borders, sometimes it doesn't. And then like, I love dynamic lettering. I love really messing with each individual letter and really popping the sound effects. And like, there's room to do that, especially with how Willi has framed the pages. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, really a lot of fun to letter. And like, it's never a chore either, because I'm trying to just make sure everything pops. Again, I call it a sprinkle, that last little sprinkle, just to make sure everything reads in the right order. Because I think maybe, someone else could letter this and do, if you were just doing not a basic job, but a simplistic job, I think it could very easily be difficult to read. But yeah, like having fun with lettering makes it more digestible, I think.
And let's be honest, a comic book is a team effort. So if everybody just puts their full first foot forward, then you nail it. Like I said, I don't want to just continue saying how much I like this book, but I'm going to continue saying how much I like this book, and that is because it's a team effort.
It's fine for me.
And when Lisa over at Top Cow put this discussion together, and she mentioned that we have everybody, I was like, oh, that's awesome, because that's exactly the best thing about a comic book, is that there's 3-4. Obviously not including your editors and the people over at Top Cow and your marketing people and all that stuff. But the people who work directly on the book, there's a whole team. And sometimes I only talk to the writer or the artist or so on and so forth. And this team is excellent. My favorite thing is like the second actual page of the first issue, where she continuously welcomes home her dad. And there's like the 5 or 6, panels in there with seasons and how old she gets older, is like an easy way to like show the passage of time, but it's not as simple as it's always the same season. Like there's fall leaves falling and it's nighttime and daytime. That was wonderfully done. Was that a team effort on that, or was that you, Willi? How did that?
It wasn't the Simon script. I don't recall if the different seasons, but the idea of the same panels, it came from Simon. Then I do my work, and it goes pretty well, because it's not very dynamic page, but now that I read all over again with the 6 issues, it's a powerful page, because there's a lot. I think the plot is there. Is the essence of the story is in that 6 panels. It's a very powerful image. I love that. It's what Simon does with his incredible talent to tell a story, because with something simple, make a great connection with the reader. Sometimes I lose myself to try to read the story as a reader, not be part of the project and see how it works, because it's different when you get so involved in the story. And I give the book to many friends and family, and feels the same thing with that page. They tell me, okay, these pages have something. And I think Simon maybe had a better connection with the story. Maybe Simon have the word here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that paneling that you've done, I think it's in issue 7 coming up. You've used it again, and it has an emotional punch again. I won't say what it is, but like even when lettering, I really felt it in my heart, particularly what happens. And like, I hope it resonates as well, because it's beautifully done.
Yeah, it's a connection between the two part of the story, the first arc and the second. I think it's very smart from Simon to use the same two different issues.
Yeah,
I'll take that.
Absolutely. And speaking of that first arc, second arc, I mean, this was originally a mini series, right? And then it got pushed to an ongoing. I'm guessing it was back on how it was received and how it was sold is why it went continuing on. Is that true, Simon?
Yes, but I'll let other people say. They're going to start speaking again here. I'll be second.
Okay. I mean, anybody here? I mean, you guys obviously heard from this. I heard it was almost immediate. Was it after issue 1, I believe, that were around that time, or issue 1 or issue 2 that I got an email saying it was going to an ongoing.
It was announced at San Diego, and we found out while Simon was at San Diego. And Simon was like texting us. I'm pretty sure it was the same with you, Willi. And I got the message at midnight and then couldn't sleep because it was so exciting.
Yeah. It was the same time.
I think at first it was like, oh yeah, we've been greenlit to another 5 issues, and then we've been greenlit to ongoing status, and we're not too sure what that means just yet. But it was just so exciting, and like the fact that Simon was just texting us frantically when it was happening.
Yeah, it was very. We were waiting because the first 5 issues, it was a deal, right? We don't know what's gonna happen with the story. But when Simon he was in San Diego, he told me, okay, I had a big announcement and said it's gonna be an ongoing story, and we were hoping for that because the story is. I don't know the entire story. Simon is the only one who knows the big picture here. We are working page and issue by issue, and it's a huge story. It's impossible to use them to make 5 issues mini series is impossible because there's a lot of character dimensions and for what I know, when I'm working on issue 8, the story is even bigger what we saw so far.
I personally like when series started out as a mini series because you can get at least an ending. Issue 5 is at least going to have some sort of something to be like, okay, cool, we're good, we can move on, and then have it be like, okay, you can tell more story. Let's do this if you can. Let's move it on. But there's a number of times where this is obviously more older than it is newer, where someone would be canceled after issue 6, and you're like, oh, cool. How does this wrap up? How do we figure out how the ending of this comic book goes, or whatever? I mean, TV shows are like that too. We've seen that with TV shows where they like do 3 or 4 episodes, or they end a season on a massive cliffhanger, and like, oh, by the way, there's not a season 2 anymore. You're like, what the? Having it be a mini series and then get upgraded is I think it's great, and it also is more marketing for the book. Like if it was just an ongoing from the beginning, it never would have been a news item. You know what I mean? Like it would have at least now been newsworthy and in the news site.
I think it's connected. It's like you say, it's connected with how the people talk well about the story, the readers, the reviews was very good, and it's impossible to make a contract or deal with 15 issues because you don't know what is going to happen. So it's hard to Simon to write 5 issues and trying to get an end, but leaving the cliffhanger, like you say, and worked very well. The people I read at the beginning, I read all the reviews, and it was pretty amazing. It's the first time in my career that I read so many reviews, and it was almost everyone was great. And it's not easy because the first issue leaves a lot to understand, and because you don't know what is going to happen in issue 2. You only know that there's 2 versions of the same character, and that's it. And I remember to read some reviews, and people say, okay, but there's nothing happening in Antarctica. A lot of people expect the all-star in Antarctica, but they don't know that you have to start with Hannah, and then development all his life to get to Antarctica and have more impact to the story. I think it's the best way to do it, and write the story slowly.
And you
It
mentioned up the
definitely
top.
gives it that.
Go ahead, Lyndon.
Oh, go on, sorry. I was going to say it definitely gives it that emotional anchor from the get-go, rather than just like trying to do like a big set piece to begin with. It's more human, more humble, to then get to the flashy stuff.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, exactly. And we mentioned off the top about being excited about being at Top Cow and an image. That's a big thing for a book like this to have those names behind it. It also helps with like they're on top of trying to get this information out to people too. I think that's actually we've even talked to I've talked to a few creators who have said it's like they don't even know when their friends' comic books are coming out, like their actual fellow creators and some of that, because they're like, I don't even know. I mean, I think I forget who it was, Blake's Buzz podcast. He posted out saying that like, how are you as creators supposed to promote a book if you don't know when the dates are coming out? If you know when your book's coming out, like how, like I talk to people and they're like, I think it's coming out the 13th. And they're like, it's because they literally legitimately don't know when it's coming out. And it's like, how are you supposed to do your job as creators and promote this book? Working as an independent publisher and a creator-owned title, there's not as much oomph behind it as a big two DC or Marvel has, where they've got like Spider-Man books sell because they're Spider-Man. You have to do this ground level promotion of the book, come on podcasts, talk to other people to try to get people excited about the book. And I think it helps with such a good book, but it also helps with Top Cow being behind you and the people over there trying to go, no, you all need to read this book. This is excellent. It's good enough to be ongoing, and so on and so forth like that.
Honestly, the team of Top Cow, it was amazing with us, and we know each other. And I think we started talking with the editor, with Elena and Phil, and I was already working in issue 3, I think. And honestly, sometimes you don't have the time to promote, to talk with many people because you're working. And now more than ever, because it's ongoing series, so you have to finish 22 pages every month, so you don't have time to promote anything. You barely can do some podcasts or talk with your friends, spend time with your family.
Yes.
Because it's a great shot, but it's pretty hard sometimes. There's a lot of things to do at least as an artist. I had to create and coloring, design, and there's more than one dimension, and there's a lot of character. It's very busy, but then I think Top Cow made a fantastic job promoting all this with Lisa too, with the marketing. And I remember on the first issue, there was interviewed with previews. There's a lot of different image of the first issue in so many places, and on the website. It was amazing. It was shocking for me because I searched Antarctica issue 1 when all of this started, and it wasn't everywhere. There was news. It was a great shock, and this is a result. I think that's why it's ongoing series, because they put a lot of effort to achieve that.
It really is a deep, it's an emotional story to it. There's this, I think there's this mystery of the fact that the word Antarctica to a lot of us, none of us really know. And I've actually had people in my life who have been to Antarctica because there's military bases there and station stuff. Yeah. So I've had people who have been deployed to Antarctica for a few months at a time. And I've actually, it's funny because I was dating a girl, this is a number of years ago, whose stepfather was being deployed to Antarctica, but then we broke up before he actually returned, so I never actually got an opportunity. So how was Antarctica? Because I never talked to this person again. So I would have at least had something to come on this podcast and be like, guys, actually this was up in Antarctica, but I don't know. But like a lot of us don't know, so there's that mystery. There's the multiple dimension type mystery to it. There's just, it meets such broad range, I think, of genres in comics too, because it has, I mean, I wouldn't say straight up horror, but it has some of that suspense, horror, thriller, mystery to it as well. And so action, adventure. And I think this would touch a lot of people. And I honestly think the whole imagery I mentioned about people coming back, the dad coming back to Hannah over and over and over again, those things, I think a lot of people who are military parents or parents of people who travel a lot for work, definitely. That's a normal thing in their lives. They see that whole, what did dad bring back to me from their trip to wherever for and I think it hits a lot of people. And I think that's a big thing, and why I think this struck with me too, is I just feel like I was reading a lot of just straight up horror when I first read this issue, or superhero stuff, and it kind of like took me away from that a little bit, and maybe, I don't know, have a little something that had a little bit more broad range of emotional stuff to it. So it's a well-written book. I'm excited for people to read, the whole trade when it comes out in February for sure.
Yeah, there's Antarctica is mystery, of course, and the idea of Simon from the beginning was to have this one location and everything happened in Antarctica. We have flashbacks and all that, but have the feeling that the movie, and that everything happened there, and you don't know what is happening here. And like you say, it's a cliffhanger, the location itself.
It's funny too. I mentioned the whole mystery of it too, because it's not as simple. Like if this book was written in New York City, I can just get on a bus right now and get to New York City, and I'll be there, a couple of hours. I live in New England, so it's obviously that it's close. But even anybody else, you can get on a plane, you fly there. No one, you have to be at a specific position or a specific, job to be able to just go to Antarctica. You don't just be like, hey, I'm going to book a plane to Antarctica and I'll see you guys when I get there. Like that added to the story because you put it on a location that Hannah she had to do what she did to get there. She couldn't just be like, I'm going to go to Antarctica and try to find my dad. It was just literally she had to like become this engineer to do that, which again adds this whole like, I don't know, has to be based in a spot like that to make this happen. It's pretty cool. Yeah, so it comes out February 14th. I guess that I mentioned is a trade paperback of this whole thing. I think it's cool. I think I am a big fan of floppy comics. I am a big fan of waiting month to month to find out what happens. I want to find out the next day, or I want to go right to the next issue. But I think there's something to be said when I walk into my local comic book shop and I can go, did you read Antarctica #1? You really should, and discuss it with some people and get the whole, vibe going. But in the same sense, I can understand people who wait for trades because they want to just consume the first story arc or an arc of sorts. Yeah. And so I'm excited for people to actually go, okay, I didn't pick up the floppies, but I'll grab the trade in February and find out what happens in Antarctica. This book is, like I said, it's wonderful. It is in contention. We do at the end of the year, we do me and my local comic book shop owner, he comes on the podcast. We do our top 10 comics of the year. It's definitely in contention for the top 10. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who wants to actually find out what's my top 10, but it's in contention for a best comic of the year for sure. So not that that's an award that you guys can put on anything. Capes and Tights podcast is best comic of the year. But yeah, so it's awesome. Say it again.
You're on my Christmas card list now.
The second, so if you have been reading it, issue 6 comes out the day this drops on the internet, and then issue 7 comes out in January. But like I said, even if you haven't and you're going to pick up the trade, grab 6 and 7 in floppy so you can continue reading to issue 7 after you get that trade in February for sure. I'm guessing you guys are excited now that this is actually like the first arc is over and you guys can actually discuss this with friends, family, anybody who's read this book. I'm sure you're excited for the trade to come out in February.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Like,
carry on.
Yeah, it's been tough at Comic-Cons to discuss the book in detail because like there's been a lot of support and a lot of like people telling us there's a bit of a buzz about it, which is nice. Really, really cool when people just randomly come up to you and just say, really enjoyed Antarctica. But I'm like, where are you up to? How much can I talk about? Like, have you read issue 1? Have you read issue 4? Like, where are we at here?
What are we talking about?
But yeah, it'll be nice. Like when people read the trade, it's like that definitive moment of like finishing that arc. So yeah, I think then it's like spoilers might be a bit more free game for Comic-Cons.
Yeah. It is one of those things. There's just so much stuff too for people out there to intake in comic books and in anything, honestly. But it's nice when people do show appreciation and come up to you and say, "Oh, I've read it," and you're like, "Well, how much you read? 3 issues?" I'm like, I can't talk about 4 or 5 now. Come on, get going here. Why didn't you read this? It's comic books. You read them all in one night. Let's do this. But I think there is something to say. I want to wrap this up, but something to say that it's such wonderfully created project, like the whole thing we mentioned with the artwork to the lettering to the layouts to everything, that it is one of those ones that maybe you want to look at it and read it again and take it. When I read it when it first came out, but obviously I was like, okay, I'll read it again. I've been lucky enough to read issue 6 and issue 7. But to just view it, like go through it and don't even read it. Just look at all the imagery and all that stuff. It's like, that's what's cool about comics, in my opinion, is that there's just so much more into it and there's so much more you can see out of it. And so hopefully people can get that when they get the trade.
There's some callbacks coming up to the first arc anyway in the second arc. So it gets quite exciting.
I'm excited. I'm really excited. I don't know if you guys can see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
it's to see what happened.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I really appreciate you all taking time out of your day, night, morning, wherever you are all over this globe to do this.
It's morning here. It's perfect for me.
It's perfect. Yeah. It's morning here too. I mean, I'm at the, what time is it in Thailand right now?
It's about 9:45 now.
Yeah, okay. So
at night.
Yeah.
That's fine. It works. Yeah.
Well, I've actually felt bad. I talked to David Hazan on the podcast a number of episodes ago, who was in Australia, and they had the marketing people doing this comic book to do like back to back interviews. And so like he was on the my podcast was on the very last of his interviews, and it was like 4:00 in the morning. He had stayed up like all night doing these things. And I'm like, why couldn't I have gotten on the first one here? Why do I have to be at 4:00 in the morning? He was like falling asleep on the podcast. But it works. Like I said, it actually works where you all are located. I think that it is one of those things that it's not, no one was up at 3:00 in the morning to try to do this, which is pretty cool.
No, he's in Argentina is 11 a.m. So it's perfectly.
Yeah.
It's a perfect time.
I feel like I need to do like an imagery when I put this out there of like Simon on a train, just Simon's head on a train.
Just constantly.
Yeah.
Simon might have started in England and got to Scotland by now, so he might have got 2 countries.
Exactly what happened. I tell you, I'm now in Edinburgh. So
there you go. See, and again, the world worked perfect ways, because here in Maine, in the United States, it snowed for us for this podcast. I should have done this like with my background so you could see outside, so you can see the snow falling down.
There's a copy of issue 2 right there, right?
Issue 2 is right here. Issue 1 right here.
Yeah,
I got them all. So here we go. Let's do this. But February 14th, grab the trade. But again, pick up your local comic book shop. Tell them you want to put it on your pull list moving forward too, because it's an excellent book. It's an ongoing series over Top Cow Image.
Thank you very much.
Again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, night, train visits, all that stuff here on the podcast. I really appreciate it, and good luck to all of you and everything else you guys are doing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting.
Thanks
for the invitation. It was amazing. It's my first time, but it was great.
Thanks everyone.